Before I ask you, Klaus, if I can say Klaus, I'm Dutch. You know, we don't do politeness. Why you said yes to these people? Let me first ask Marcus, as a director. You went in with certain ideas, of course. What surprised you most?
First of all, I had a lot of preconceptions, of course. I didn't know Klaus Schwab. I knew the World Economic Forum when Christian approached me. And when I met Professor Schwab the first time, I was somehow amazed because he looked very young. And for me, it's important that if I'm committing myself to a documentary, that the person I'm accompanying for so long, that he has at least a vision. And I was really looking forward, what was the vision? And I saw there a big vision to bring together the most powerful people and confront them with ethics, and then think that, could you then change the world?
But you took 1 year, right? Because it was like a contract between us that you were saying, I need at least 1 year. I want to take my time. I'm not sure. I have my preconception as well, so I want to see if I want to make the film. You know, remember that?
Yeah. I had a lot of concerns. I was very reluctant, and it took me 1 year to sign the contract.
And so, what shifted?
Because first of all, because it was a sign of a time. I mean, the whole world is talking about the elite, and they have no trust anymore in the elite. And there is the elite. The elite is gathering there, and we have now the possibility to see what the elite really looks like. That was one thing. The second thing is that I was shooting in Davos already, and I got a huge access. I asked Professor Schwab back then when we were meeting the first time, I said that we have a contract with our audience. We have to get close to what he's doing, what is at stake there. We need to look behind the normally closed doors, and if we don't get this access, we can't do that film. And he promised me to get that access. But of course, and I got Trump, I got Macron, and I got Theresa May when she was going on stage, all these great scenes. But when we had the bilaterals, I was asked to leave the room after 3 minutes, after the weather. So I said afterwards I wrote Professor Schwab a letter, an email, saying that this is not possible to continue that way. And he said, okay, but you have to respect also the privacy of those people. And we then agreed that he is at least trying to persuade these people. And that was actually then the final decision to make that film, because we went to Hanoi, and we got that great scene with Aung San Suu Kyi, where I could really see the diplomacy and the art of talking to those people. And I could be there from the very beginning to the very end, and then it started a certain trust to do that film.
Professor, so you're Klaus. You're learning. It's, once you go Dutch, you never go back. So your communication manager says, don't do this. And then you did. And so why did you say yes to these people?
It was a very difficult decision for Hilde, my wife, and myself, because we are very private people, and it's not only, let's say, our nature, but if you want to be the curator of a platform, you shouldn't put yourself too much in the front. So during all those years, we have tried to be quite outside the public eye. We never go to cocktail parties, or you never have seen us in major people's magazines and so on. And then suddenly, I felt a little bit like being asked to make striptease in public. And so I needed 2 years to get accustomed to the idea. And then what to a certain extent changed my mind was that we are actually celebrating our 50th anniversary, and in some way it would be good to bring to the public what is actually the motivation behind what we are doing, and to personalize it to a certain extent.
I've been on television a couple of times, and I found it a terrifying experience. You can just watch yourself for 2 hours at work.
Yeah, what let's say struck me most was a scene actually when you asked me about Monsanto, and I was not knowing that this would be part of the movie, and that's the reason why I was thinking. And I just was asking myself, why are we in such a situation? Of course, you could criticize Monsanto, but you could also criticize the European Commission, our governments, because we haven't forbidden many of those products, despite the fact that we know that they have negative effects. This is the reason why next week I will publish a manifesto where we explicitly say that companies have to stand for all negative side effects of their products and internalize external costs, which means the damage they are doing to the environment.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. Jennifer, early on in the film, you lay out your task and you say, I'm going to make many people feel as uncomfortable as possible. You certainly made me feel uncomfortable, especially the Bolsonaro little interaction. What's it like for you to watch yourself in that role?
Also terrifying, I think. You know, it's quite an experience to go and to be at Davos as a person who is so deeply enraged by what's happening and what many of the people there represent. And so, in a way, to watch me try and control that and be able to say something and confront people in a way that I don't know if I hope they felt a bit uncomfortable, but at least they thought about it afterwards and were moving forward. I could kind of see the conflict within myself, watching myself.
Yeah, because it seems like that Davos crowd, it's all about being professional. And so you wear a very good suit, and your mood is stable. And you check your emotions, your religious beliefs at the door, and then you try to be as efficient as possible. And they're all men. Yeah. And then you come in.
Then I come in, and I kind of take deep breaths a couple of times, as you can tell, and I feel like this is a forum that needs to be doing more. And it can't just be me going in, right? I think optimally there would be many more of us who were helping set the agenda. It needs, in a way, to move from where it was in the beginning, where the world was a different place, into the new era of Davos, where we actually put propositions on the table, and Klaus and others, in a way, force that mirror, but not only about, as I say, about what they can do, which in a way might be voluntary, but actually how they're going to together get the laws in place to solve this problem. And so I think getting that moving and modernizing it so that we have a Davos that actually answers to the inequalities, answers to climate change, answers to biodiversity, that's the impatience that I have, but I hope that by going there and confronting people and working with Klaus and pushing a bit, we can get there, because it can't stay the way it is right now from my perspective. It is about systems change, and it is about also needing to modernize it so it plays a positive shift so that people like Greta don't lose their own hope.
Thank you. Because watching the film, it's like there are two approaches. There's the gradualism, embodied by the publicly listed company, the CEOs, and then there's your message. And it seems the World Economic Forum is now forced into a decision to go along with the gradualism. Revolutions need not to be made by angry people, and the angry people.
We can, and that's our whole intention, to shake up people, to alert them how the world is changing, how fast the world is changing, the complexity. But we also, and that's the regret, and I mentioned it to you already before, that's the regret which I have, that the film doesn't show more the impact which we really have on the lives of, I would say, millions of people. Even in the environmental field, where we have trained our global shapers, thousands of global shapers, to be missionaries for environmental responsibility. We have seen two projects, one in Indonesia, where we work together with the government and the farmers. You have seen the drone project. But the forum at the moment is involved in about 70 of such projects together with governments. Thank you, Minister, also with the Dutch government. What we are doing, for example, in Africa, in India, to change the approach in agriculture. We need not just to shake up people and to, as Greta said, I'm happy that she accepted my invitation to come to Davos, but we cannot be just shocked. We have to act, and we have to, in order to act, we all have responsibilities, business, governments, and each of us as a consumer.
But emissions are rising. In the time that Davos has been happening, look at the impacts of climate change. Look at what's happened with biodiversity. Look at what's happening in inequality. So it's not working to do
that. Jennifer, like you, we have no decision-making power. We can put people in front of their responsibility. We can convince them, but the final decision has to be taken by each of those who participate, and by governments, and by consumers.
So let's push governments. Let's push governments more. The film speaks about Rwanda and getting that regulation in place. Let's do that on climate change. Let's bring together the financial sector of the world, sit them down, the banks, the insurers, the pension funds, the government regulators, and work out the proposition to get the regulation in place, because we just don't have time. So that's. I think you can do that. You can do that.
Yes, we are doing it, and we all have to do it. And what is very important is not to go into the blaming game. If we want to make forward progress, the only way is that civil society, governments, international organizations, and business work together, animated and driven by the young generation, by you, Jennifer.
That's it. You could argue that by not putting the climate emergency center stage, by saying, look, I have to change the World Economic Forum entirely because we have 10 more years or it's full catastrophe. By not sending that message, you're inadvertently, unwittingly sending another message, which is, it's going to be fine.
No. First, when you look at the Paris Agreement, for example, you know, Jennifer, we were the preferred partner of the UN as far as stakeholder outreach was concerned, and of the French government in preparing actually the Paris Agreement. Yes, we have little time, and I'm very worried about it. I'm worried as the head of the World Economic Forum, but I'm also worried as a grandfather. Because what we are doing, if we do not act fast enough, and I'm writing, by the way, a book about it, also to shake up people, we are committing betrayal at the next generation.
So Paris is coming into a completely critical moment. 2020, right, is when that agreement has a ratchet mechanism that all countries are supposed to increase their ambition. They're all supposed to increase their targets. And right now, we're not in a good shape. So I think looking at a manifesto, looking at Davos 2020, and this is not just about Klaus Schwab, this is indeed about everybody who comes, but there is convening power. Having that manifesto say, we support all countries moving forward to increase their ambition, because the thing that I think is lacking is the business leaders. There's very few of them that are ready to actually stand up and support new laws, support regulations. And I think it's the moment right now with 2020 before the doorstep here that we can use this 50th anniversary to make clear that it is going to be more in the center. That was what my letter was all about. Put it in the center. Of course, there are other issues, and there's so many interconnections, but let's put that front and center so that we can get a Paris Agreement that lives forward and solves the problem and doesn't completely fail.
Marcus, has making this film made you more hopeful or less?
Much more hopeful, actually. I remember a screening which we had in Geneva with these shapers. There were like 300 shapers from all around the world, and they watched the first 30 minutes.
Shapers are young
a shaper?
people between 20 and 30 years old.
Yeah, between 20 and 30, there's the social entrepreneurs and the shapers. And they were all together, nobody was wearing jackets and so on. And then suddenly they were clubbing, they were really yelling when Professor Schwab was saying something, but then they were yelling when you were saying something. And giving standing ovations to you, and when Greta was saying something, and then I thought, okay, these are these young entrepreneurial people from all around the world, and they are not biased. They clap when both are saying something. So this is not dividing, because I thought you both want to change the world. You're maybe, Jennifer, you're putting more your finger in the wound where it's really hurting, and I think the World Economic Forum, I could see Murad and Dominic, they really want to change something, and I wanted to give them a stage that they at least can explain what they want. And so that gives me hope. And the second thing, when you were saying to the youth that they are bequeathing a big burden, all these debts, then you were giving them a hand. And I like that very much, that you took them seriously. And this gives me hope, because I believe in the youth, in the greater youth, but also in these entrepreneurial young people wanting to change something, and not only with the aim to earn a lot of money.
Yeah. Klaus, you're still going strong, so it will be many years from now, but at some point we will be able to visit your grave, and we will look at... we're in Holland. You can do these things here. And so we will look at your tombstone, and it will have a date very far from now, and then it says, "Here lies Klaus Schwab." And then what does it say?
Who tried at his best to improve the state of the world by believing in the positive power of people, and by believing that that change is not just happening. We are constructing change, and we are very privileged to live in a society which can actually act, which has the option to act.
This is a very big tombstone.
But it's also a very long life, you see.
Exactly.